The air shimmered like broken glass on Route 285. Miles Reed watched heat ripples dance across cracked asphalt, knuckles white against the wheel of his '98 Dodge Ram. 3 years back from Fallujah, and still the desert made his throat close up. Different sand, same ghosts. He'd been driving 16 hours straight from Colorado Springs. No destination, just away. Away from the nightmares. Away from sympathetic nods at the VA. Away from the empty bottle of Jack that had become his nightly ritual. The abandoned truck stop appeared like a mirage, sun-bleached and forgotten, its faded sign promising last chance gas to travelers who had long since found other routes. Miles pulled in, not for gas. His tank was quarter full, but because his eyes burned and the tremor in his left hand had returned. The one that started after the IED took Ramirez and left Miles with a Purple Heart and shrapnel lodged too close to his spine to remove. 20 minutes, he mumbled, parking beside the skeletal remains of a diesel pump. Then back on the road. The silence pressed against his eardrums. No wind, no birds, just the tick-tick-tick of his cooling engine and the soft crunch of his boots on gravel as he stretched, feeling the familiar pull of scar tissue across his lower back. There, a sound. Not the wind. Not his imagination. A shuffle. A scrape. Human. His body reacted before his mind could process. Military training kicked in as he dropped into a crouch, scanning the perimeter, right hand instinctively reaching for a sidearm that wasn't there anymore. The sound came again from behind the dilapidated convenience store. A whimper, thin and high. He moved cautiously around the building to where the loading dock gaped like an open mouth. That S when he saw her. A small figure crawling from beneath the loading dock, covered in so much dust she almost blended with the earth. A girl, maybe 8 or 9, her dark hair matted, her clothes torn. When she looked up, her eyes were wide with a terror Miles recognized, the same look he had seen in villages after mortar strikes. "Hey," he said softly, keeping his distance. "You okay?" The girl flinched but did not retreat. Her arms and legs were scratched, dirt ground into the wounds. Her lips were cracked from dehydration. "I'm not gonna hurt you," Miles said, slowly removing his canteen. "Water?" He extended it, then set it down halfway between them. The girl stared at the canteen, then at him, calculation in her eyes that no child should possess. She darted forward, snatched the water, and retreated to a safe distance. She drank greedily, water spilling down her chin, cutting clean tracks through the dust on her face. "What is your name?" Miles asked. "Where are your parents?" "Ellie," she whispered, barely audible. Miles. "Are you alone out here, Ellie?" She nodded, then shook her head, her eyes darting toward the highway. "Not safe," she said, voice gaining strength. "They'll come back." Miles felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Who will come back?" Ellie didn't answer, but her eyes flicked to his truck, then back to his face. A question. "You need help," Miles said. "Hospital." Ellie's reaction was violent. She scrambled backward, shaking her head. No hospital. No police. They'll find me." The cold feeling in Miles's gut hardened. He knew about men who kept secrets, men who had power and used it to silence those who might expose them. "Okay," he said. "No hospital. But you need food, clean water, somewhere safe." She studied him, this small, dust-covered oracle with eyes that had seen too much. "You were a soldier," she said. Miles nodded, surprised. "How do you know?" "The way you walk, the way you look around." She took another sip of water. "My dad was a soldier, before." At the truck, he pulled out a first aid kit and a spare t-shirt from his duffel. "Here," he said. "It is clean." While she changed in the truck stop bathroom, Miles scanned the horizon. The smart move would be to drive her to the nearest police station. But something about her fear, the specific way she mentioned men, raised every red flag in his system. When Ellie emerged, she was wearing his shirt like a dress. She'd wiped most of the dust from her face, revealing a spray of freckles across her nose. Without the layer of dirt, the bruises on her arms were more visible. Fingerprint bruises, adult-sized. "You hungry?" Miles asked, keeping his voice neutral despite the rage building in his chest. As she ate perched on the tailgate of his truck, Miles watched the empty highway. The sun was beginning its descent, painting the desert in gold and amber. "Ellie," he said carefully, "I need to know who was after you, so I can keep you safe." She chewed slowly, eyes on the horizon. "Men," she said finally. "Important men. They have a place, underground, where they take girls." The protein bar in Miles' hand crumbled as his fist clenched involuntarily. "How many girls?" "I don't know. I only saw 3 others, before I ran." She looked up at him, eyes reflecting the dying sun. "They'll kill me if they find me." Miles felt something shift inside him, something that had been dormant since he returned from the war. A sense of purpose, clear and sharp as a knife. "They won, to find you," he said with unexpected certainty. "You re with me now." "They'll look for you too," Ellie warned. "Once they know." Miles nodded, understanding what she wasn't saying. By helping her, he was making himself a target. "Let us go," he said, closing the tailgate. "We'll drive through the night." As Ellie climbed into the passenger seat, she paused. "Why are you helping me?" she asked, suspicion threading through her voice. Miles considered the question, feeling the weight of his dog tags beneath his shirt, the ones he still wore, even though he had no right to them anymore, not after what happened in that village outside Fallujah. "Because someone should have," he said finally. As they pulled away from the truck stop, dust billowing behind them, Miles checked the rearview mirror. The setting sun turned the landscape blood red, and for a moment he was back there, in that other desert with its other ghosts. But then Ellie shifted beside him, small and solid and real, and for the first time in 3 years, Miles Reed had a mission. They drove through darkness, headlights carving a narrow path through the night. Miles kept the radio off, his senses tuned to the road, to the rearview mirror, to the small figure curled against the passenger door. Ellie had fallen into fitful sleep an hour back, but her face remained tense even in rest. The dashboard clock read 2:17 a.m. They'd been driving for nearly 6 hours, taking back roads, avoiding the interstate. His eyes burned with fatigue, but sleep wasn't an option. Not until they were somewhere safe. As the truck rounded a bend, headlights swept across a faded sign. "Welcome to Coyote Springs, Pop." 8:42. The small town materialized out of the darkness. A gas station, a diner, a motel with a flickering vacancy sign. Miles pulled into the motel parking lot and cut the engine. The sudden silence roused Ellie. She blinked awake, instantly alert, her eyes darting around to assess their surroundings. "Where are we?" she asked, voice rough with sleep. "Coyote Springs, middle of nowhere." Miles nodded toward the motel office. "We need rest. I'll get us a room." Ellie's fingers curled around the door handle. "What if they track your credit card?" Miles paused. "Cash only," he assured her. "And I'll register under a different name." The night manager barely looked up when Miles entered the office, a bored-looking man in his 60s with nicotine-stained fingers. He took Miles' cash without question, handed over a key attached to a plastic tag shaped like a cactus. "Room 12, end of the row." The man's eyes finally lifted, taking in Miles' gas appearance. "Passing through?" "Just for the night," Miles answered. "Not much to see in Coyote Springs," the manager said, "unless you're interested in the old turquoise mine. Used to be the only thing keeping this town alive." Miles paused. "The mine still operational?" "Closed 15 years ago. Some outfit from Vegas bought the land a few years back. Private property now." The manager returned to his book. "Shame. This town's been dying ever since." Inside room 12, Ellie immediately checked the window, making sure it could open, noting its distance from the ground. The behavior of someone used to planning escape routes. "You should shower," Miles said. "Clean those scratches properly." While Ellie disappeared into the bathroom, Miles checked his phone. No service. He wasn't too surprised. They were in the middle of nowhere, but it was a problem. He needed information. In the bathroom, Miles stripped off his shirt, avoiding his reflection in the mirror. He knew what he'd see: the network of scars across his torso, the tattoo on his shoulder bearing the names of men who hadn't made it home, the hollow look in his eyes that had been there since Fallujah. Under the spray of hot water, he allowed himself to remember who he used to be. Staff Sergeant Miles Reed, 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines. A man with purpose, a leader who had been trusted with the lives of others. Before the IED, before the friendly fire incident, before the discharge that was classified as honorable but felt anything but. The memories rushed back, unbidden and unwelcome. The village outside Fallujah. Intelligence said insurgents were using it as a base, house by house, room by room. They had been on edge, all of them. 3 days earlier, an IED had taken out the lead Humvee in their convoy, killing Ramirez instantly, leaving Miles with shrapnel in his back. The village had been quiet. Too quiet. No children playing. No women at the well. They'd had cleared 4 houses without incident. The 5th house had a blue door. Inside, a family. Father, mother, 3 children. The youngest, a girl, maybe 4, holding a stuffed rabbit missing one eye. The father had moved suddenly, reached beneath a cushion. Johnson had fired first, then Davis, then everyone. When it was over, they found what the father had been reaching for: a Quran. The girl with the rabbit had been hit twice. Her blood soaked into the packed earth floor, turning the dust to mud. Miles slammed his fist against the shower wall, the pain pulling him back to the present. The water had gone cold, but he barely noticed. When he emerged from the bathroom, Ellie was sitting cross-legged on the bed, wide awake. "You have nightmares too," she said. It wasn't a question. He sat heavily on the edge of his bed. "Yeah. About the war? About mistakes I made, people I couldn't save." He looked at her directly. "Ellie, I need to know more. About who's after you. About this place they kept you." She picked at a loose thread on the bedspread. "It's underground, in the old mine." Miles felt his blood go cold. The turquoise mine the night manager had mentioned. "Here? In Coyote Springs?" Ellie nodded. "I heard them talking. They bring girls here because nobody notices, because the town is dying, and people look away." "How did you escape?" "There was a new girl, younger than me. She wouldn't have stopped crying." Ellie's voice had gone flat, emotionless. They were angry. Everyone was watching her. Not watching me. Miles fought to keep his expression neutral despite the rage building inside him. "And you found your way to that truck stop?" "I walked for 2 days, hid during the day, followed the highway at night." Her eyes met his, defiant. "I'm not going back." "No," Miles agreed. "You, Rinat." He crossed to the window, pulling the curtain aside just enough to peer out at the empty parking lot. The first hint of dawn was lightening the eastern sky. "We should leave soon," he said. "Head east. I know someone in Amarillo who might help us." "They have people looking for me," Ellie said. "Important people, with money." "I've dealt with important people before," Miles replied. "You don't understand," Ellie insisted. "These men, they don't just take girls. They hurt them. She faltered, and for the first time, Miles saw the child beneath the survivor, scared, hurt, overwhelmed. "They film it," she whispered. "They make money from it. Lots of money." Miles sat beside her, careful to leave space between them. "I understand more than you think, Ellie." She looked up at him, skeptical. "After the war," he continued, "I worked private security for a while. Saw things I wish I hadn't. There are dark places in this world. Places where money and power let people do terrible things. You were safe now," he told Ellie, though he knew it was a promise he might not be able to keep. She studied him with those 2 old eyes. "No one is safe," she said. Then, after a pause, "But I trust you." The simple declaration hit Miles like a physical blow. Trust, something he hadn't earned, hadn't he deserved, since that day at the Blue Door. "Get some sleep," he said. "Just for a few hours. Then we'll go." Miles stretched out on his bed, fully clothed, one hand resting near the knife he'd placed under his pillow. He dreamed of the girl with the rabbit. But when he reached her, bleeding in the dust, her face changed, became Ellie's face, and the rabbit in her arms became a small teddy bear, worn and dirty. Miles jerked awake, heart pounding. The room was filled with morning light. He checked his watch. 8:37 a.m. They'd slept longer than planned. He sat up, instantly alert, scanning the room for Ellie. She wasn't in her bed. "Ellie?" he called, fighting down panic. Then he saw it, a piece of paper on the table, a note written in careful, childish handwriting. "Gone to get food. Back soon. Don T. Worry. Ima P.I.S. I saw the picture in your wallet. Is that your daughter?" Miles froze. The picture in his wallet. The one he carried but never looked at. Emma, 6 years old when the photo was taken, 8 when her mother cut off all contact after his third drunk driving arrest. Emma would be 14 now. Ellie's age, maybe. Outside, a car door slammed. Miles moved to the window, peering through the curtain. A black SUV had pulled into the parking lot. 2 men in suits stepped out, scanning the motel. Not tourists, not locals. Men with purpose. The tremor in Miles' left hand returned, stronger now. But alongside it came something else, a clarity he hadn't felt in years. The fog of guilt and alcohol and aimless wandering burned away by a single, crystal-clear imperative. Find Ellie. Protect her. Get her out. Miles grabbed his duffel, shoving his few possessions inside. His fingers brushed against something hard at the bottom, the 9mm he'd carried since leaving Colorado. A weapon he promised himself he'd never use again. He checked the magazine. Full. One in the chamber. As he tucked the gun into his waistband, a soft knock came at the door. "Miles?" Ellie's voice, barely audible. "It's me, quick." He opened the door just enough for her to slip inside, then locked it behind her. She carried a plastic bag from the gas station, her eyes wide with alarm. "They're here," she said. "I know." Miles moved to the window again. The men were walking toward their room, unhurried but purposeful. "We need to go, now." They left through the bathroom window, Ellie first, then Miles, his duffel slung across his chest. The morning sun cast long shadows as they crept along the back of the motel, using the dumpsters for cover. Miles could see his truck, 20 yards away, impossible to reach without being spotted. The men in suits were at their motel room door now, one knocking while the other scanned the surroundings. "This way," Miles whispered, guiding Ellie toward the diner adjacent to the motel. They slipped between buildings, emerging onto a side street. Coyote Springs was waking up. An old woman swept her front porch. A man walked a 3-legged dog. A postal worker sorted mail in her truck. Normal life, unaware of the hunters and hunted moving through their midst. "Need to find a phone," Miles said. "Call for help." The diner's neon open sign buzzed in the window. Inside, locals hunched over coffee cups at the counter. Miles led Ellie to a booth in the back corner, positioning himself to see both the entrance and the parking lot. A waitress approached, late 50s, hair dyed red, name tag reading Dot. "Coffee?" she asked, already pouring a cup for Miles. "Thanks. Is there a phone I could use?" "My cell's dead." Dot nodded toward a payphone near the restrooms. "Still works. One of the last in the county." At the payphone, Miles fed in quarters and dialed a number he hadn't called in years. It rang 4 times before a gruff voice answered. "Yeah? Hank, it's Reed." A pause. "Well, I'll be damned. Thought you might be dead?" "Not yet." Miles kept his voice low, eyes on Ellie across the diner. "Listen, I am in trouble. Need help." "What kind of trouble?" The kind that involves a child in danger and men who won. Stop looking. Where are you? A place called Coyote Springs, New Mexico, about 3 hours east of Albuquerque. Jesus, Reed, middle of nowhere. That is the idea. Miles watched as Dot set a chocolate milk in front of Ellie. Need transport, somewhere safe to take her. Her? A girl? Maybe 13, 14. They were keeping her in some kind of underground operation. Sex trafficking, I think. Hank swore under his breath. And you just happened to find her? She found me. Miles hesitated. She matters, Hank. The line went quiet. They both knew what Miles was really saying. I need this to matter. I need to get something right. Okay, Hank said finally. I can have someone there in 6 hours, maybe 5. Too long. They were already here. Who is they? 2 men in suits, black SUV, professional types. Christ, Reed, listen to me. If these are the people I think they are, they don't just run girls. They provide services to very powerful clients, politicians, judges, guys with real reach. Miles felt cold despite the diner OSS warmth. I figured. Get out of town. Head northeast on Route 14. There it's an old hunting cabin about 20 miles up, belongs to a buddy of mine. I'll text you the coordinates, wait there. I do not have my phone, or my truck. They rewatching it. Hank swore again. Okay, new plan. There's a bus station in... Miles never heard the rest. Through the window he saw a black SUV pull into the diner parking lot, the same one from the motel. Gotta go, he said. They found us. Miles hung up, already moving toward Ellie. She'd seen them too, her body rigid with fear. Back door? He asked Dot as she refilled his coffee. Through the kitchen, she replied, eyes narrowing. Everything okay? Fine. Just remembered an appointment. As they slid from the booth, the diner IS front door opened. Miles kept his head down, guiding Ellie toward the kitchen. Sir? The voice stopped him cold, authoritative, used to being obeyed. Miles turned slowly. One of the suited men stood just inside the door, his partner still outside by the SUV. Up close, he looked even more out of place. Expensive haircut, manicured nails, the bulge of a shoulder holster visible beneath his jacket. Help you? Miles asked, keeping his voice neutral. The man smiled, the expression never reaching his eyes. I believe you have something that belongs to us. The diner had gone silent, the locals watching with the wary stillness of people who knew when trouble had walked in. Miles shifted slightly, positioning himself between the man and Ellie. Don T know what you were talking about. I think you do. The man's gaze flicked to Ellie, then back to Miles. The girl, she's a runaway. We've been very worried. She's my daughter, Miles said, the lie coming easily. Is that so? The man reached inside his jacket, producing a leather wallet. He flipped it open to reveal a badge. Agent Phillips, FBI. We've been tracking a child trafficking ring operating in this area. This girl is a witness in our investigation. It was a good cover story, professional, rehearsed. But Miles had spent enough time around real federal agents to spot the inconsistencies, the badge that was flashed too quickly, the lack of backup, the failure to follow protocol. If that's true, Miles said, I'll need to see some ID, the real kind, and I'll need to make a phone call to verify. Phillips' smile tightened. Of course, but perhaps we could continue this conversation outside. Miles felt Ellie's hand clutch the back of his jacket. A silent plea. Actually, he said, I think we were good right here. Phillips sighed as if disappointed. Have it your way. He gestured toward the door. Jackson. The second man entered, hand already reaching beneath his jacket. But before he could draw, another voice cut through the tension. That's far enough. Everyone turned. At the counter, an elderly man in a khaki uniform had stood up, a Sheriff ES star pinned to his chest. He held a revolver, pointed steadily at Phillips. Sheriff Dale Mercer, he introduced himself. Mind telling me what 2 FBI agents are doing in my jurisdiction without the courtesy of a heads up? Phillips recovered quickly. Classified investigation, Sheriff. Need to know basis. Well, I need to know, Mercer replied, unmoved. This here as my town. Sheriff, Miles said carefully, these men aren't TFBI. Mercer ESI's never left Phillips. I figured as much. Real feds call ahead. And they done T-drive rental cars with Vegas plates. Phillips' composure slipped just for a moment. His hand twitched toward his holster. Don T, Mercer warned. Whatever you being paid, it ain't T worth dying over. The diner had emptied, leaving only Miles, Ellie, the sheriff, and the two false agents. You don't understand what you interfering with, Phillips said, his voice hardening. This goes beyond your pay grade, old man. Maybe so, Mercer conceded. But right now you in my diner in my town waving around a fake badge. He gestured with his revolver. That makes it my business. Miles felt Ellie trembling beside him. Whatever happened next, he needed to get her out. Sheriff, he began. This girl is the subject of a federal investigation, Phillips interrupted. A dangerous runaway with a history of violence and false accusations. That is not true. Ellie's voice rang out fierce despite her fear. They were the men who keep girls in the mine. Phillips's face darkened. You see, Sheriff? Delusional. Needs help. Mercer's weathered face revealed nothing. The mine, huh? He glanced at Ellie. The old turquoise operation? She nodded emphatically. Interesting, Mercer said, because that property been locked up tight since some company from Vegas bought it. Private research facility, they said. Brought in their own security. Wouldn't even let me on the grounds. He looked back at Phillips. Your people, I am guessing. Phillips's smile returned, colder now. Sheriff, I'd advise you to stand down. This situation is bigger than some backwater town and its washed-up lawmen. The insult hit its mark. Mercer's jaw tightened, but his gun never wavered. Maybe so, but I've been sheriff here for 27 years. Seen all kinds come through. And you know what they all had in common? They all thought they were untouchable. What happened next occurred in heartbeats. Jackson, the second man, made his move, drawing his weapon. Mercer fired first, the revolver's report deafening. Jackson staggered back, clutching his shoulder, his gun clattering to the floor. Phillips used the chaos to lunge forward, tackling the sheriff. Both men went down hard, wrestling for the revolver. Run! Miles shouted to Ellie, shoving her toward the kitchen. But instead of following his command, she darted toward the fallen gun, scooping it up before Jackson could recover. Miles drew his own weapon, aiming at Phillips, who now had Mercer pinned, the revolver pressed against the sheriff's temple. Drop it, Miles ordered, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. Now, Phillips looked up, assessing the situation. Miles with a gun on him, Ellie holding Jackson's weapon with surprising competence, Jackson himself bleeding on the floor. You don't want to do this, Phillips said. You have no idea who you are dealing with. I think I do, Miles replied. Men who prey on children. Men who think money and connections put them above the law. The law? Phillips laughed, sharp with contempt. We own the law. Judges, prosecutors, cops, all on payroll. You think this ends here, with you playing hero in some forgotten diner? Let him go, Miles said. Last warning. Phillips pressed the revolver harder against Mercer's head. You wanted to shoot. Too risky. Might hit the sheriff. He was right. From this angle, with the two men entangled, Miles couldn't guarantee a clean shot. But then Ellie spoke, her voice unnaturally calm. I will. She had moved to the side, finding a clear angle, Jackson's gun held in both hands the way someone had taught her. You should have checked my file more carefully, she told Phillips. My father wasn't even just a soldier. He was a shooting instructor. Taught me since I was 8. The revelation hit Miles like a physical blow. Another piece of Ellie's past, another layer to her survival. Phillips must have seen something in her eyes, the absolute certainty of someone with nothing left to lose, because his expression changed, calculation replacing confidence. "Okay," he said, easing the pressure on the revolver. "Let us all calm down. Get off him," Ellie commanded. Slowly. Phillips complied, raising his hands as he stood. Mercer scrambled away, retrieving his revolver, his face flushed with anger. "On your knees," the sheriff ordered, covering both men. "Hands behind your heads." As Phillips sank to his knees, his eyes locked with Miles's. "You were dead," he said softly. "Both of you. And not just you. Everyone who helps you. Everyone who knows you." Outside, the sound of an approaching vehicle drew their attention. Through the window, Miles saw a second black SUV pulling into the parking lot. "More company," he warned. Mercer swore under his breath. "Out the back. Go. I'll hold them here." "Us, they'll kill you," Ellie protested. "Maybe," the sheriff said. "But I am too old and too ornery to run. This is my town." He met Miles's eyes. "Get her somewhere safe, then bring the whole damn federal government down on these bastards." Miles recognized the look in the old man's eyes, the same one he'd seen in soldiers making their last stand. "Thank you," he said, the words inadequate for the sacrifice being offered. In the kitchen, the staff had vanished. Miles led Ellie to the back door, pausing only to grab a set of car keys hanging on a hook by the exit. The keys belonged to an ancient Ford F-150. Miles helped Ellie into the cab, then slid behind the wheel. The engine coughed twice before catching. As Miles backed out of the lot, gunfire erupted from inside the diner. 3 shots in rapid succession, then silence. Ellie flinched. "The sheriff made his choice," Miles said, his voice tight. "We honor it by staying alive." He floored the accelerator, carrying them away from Coyote Springs and its buried secrets. For 10 minutes they drove in silence. The road stretched before them, empty and unforgiving in the harsh morning light. Finally, Ellie spoke. "I should have told you everything, from the beginning." Miles glanced at her. "About your father? The shooting lessons?" She shook her head. "About the others, the other girls." Her voice caught. "There are more than I said. Dozens, maybe. Not just in the mine, other places too." The implications settled over Miles like a shroud. Not just a local operation, but something larger, something organized, with resources and reach. "That's why they willing to kill for it," he said. "It is not just about silencing one witness, it is about protecting an enterprise." Ellie nodded. "The men who run it, they have names. Important names. I saw a list once. Clients." "You memorized it?" "Some of it. A judge, a senator, a police commissioner from Las Vegas." She looked down at her hands. "That is why no one would have believed me, why no one would have helped." Miles thought of Hank's warning. They provide services to very powerful clients, politicians, judges, guys with real reach. "Someone will believe you," he promised. "We just need to find the right people." They drove on, putting distance between them and Coyote Springs. Miles kept checking the rearview mirror, expecting to see black SUVs in pursuit, but the road behind remained empty. It felt wrong. Too easy. "We need to ditch this truck," he said. "They'll have the plates by now." They turned onto a smaller road, the pavement giving way to gravel, then to dirt. The terrain grew rougher, the desert scrub yielding to scattered piñon pines as they gained elevation. "Have you ever thought about it?" Ellie asked suddenly. "What you will do, after?" "After what?" "After you get me somewhere safe, after this is over." She watched his profile. "Will you go back to driving, looking for whatever it is you looking for?" The question caught Miles off guard. He hadn't a thought beyond the immediate crisis, beyond keeping Ellie alive, finding help, exposing the operation at the mine. "I done it to know," he admitted. Ellie nodded, as if his answer confirmed something for her. "You lost someone," she said. That is why you understood, why you helped me." Miles felt a familiar pressure behind his eyes. "My daughter," he said, the words scraping his throat. "Emma, her mother took her. After I came back from the war, after I changed." "The picture in your wallet," Ellie said. "She looks like you. Same eyes." The road narrowed, winding higher into the foothills. According to the truck odometer, they'd decome about 15 miles from Coyote Springs, nearing the area where Hank had said the cabin would be. "Pull over," Ellie said suddenly. Miles complied, bringing the truck to a stop at a small turnout overlooking the valley below. In the distance, Coyote Springs was barely visible, shimmering in the heat. Ellie reached into her pocket and pulled out a small object, holding it in her palm. A USB drive, scratched and dirty, attached to a broken keychain shaped like a teddy bear. "What is that?" Miles asked. "Everything," Ellie replied. "Names, dates, account numbers, videos." She closed her fingers around it. "I took it the night I escaped. It was in the office. I thought if I had proof, someone would have to help me." Miles stared at the small device. Such a tiny thing to contain so much darkness, so much power. "Why didn't you tell me about this before?" Ellie met his gaze unflinchingly. "I needed to know if you were really helping me, or if you were one of them." The test, the line between savior and predator, so easily crossed in a world where trust came at such a high price. "And now?" Miles asked. "Now I know." She held out the USB drive. "This is why I'll never stop looking. Why they sent those men to kill me, not capture me." Miles accepted the drive, feeling its weight, far greater than its physical presence. "We need to get this to someone who can use it," he said. "Someone beyond their reach." "There is something else you should know," Ellie said, her voice dropping. "How they found me in the first place." "What do you mean?" "They have criteria: foster kids, runaways, girls who one had be missed." Her voice flat again, retreating from emotion. "My father was Special Forces. He died when I was 11. After my mom, she couldn't handle it. Started drinking, then pills. She looked out at the valley. Child Services took me after she overdosed." "And that is how they found you," Miles said, the final piece falling into place. "Through the system." Ellie nodded. "They have people, spotters, looking for girls who fit their profile." Miles thought of the girls who remained in the mine. How many others had been carefully selected, their isolation weaponized against them? "The cabin can be far," he said, tucking the USB drive into his pocket. "We'll contact Hank from there." They continued up the mountain road. After a quarter-mile on a narrow track, the trees opened to reveal a clearing. In the center stood a cabin, rustic, weathered, but solid. "Wait here," Miles said, cutting the engine. "Let me check it out first." He approached cautiously, the 9mm in hand. The door was locked, but Miles found a key beneath a false rock by the steps. Inside, the cabin was basic but well-maintained. One main room with a stone fireplace, a kitchenette, a bedroom. A landline phone sat on a small desk in the corner. "All clear," he told Ellie. And there, as a phone, relief washed over her face. "We can call for help." Miles dialed Hank's number from memory. On the 5th ring, the line connected. "Yeah? Irangus Reed, I am at the cabin." Jesus Christ. Hank's relief was audible. "Thought you were dead when you cut out like that." "Nearly was. Sheriff in town bought us time to escape, but he paid for it." Miles glanced at Ellie, who was exploring the cabin. "Listen, Hank, this is bigger than we thought. Multiple states, high-profile clients, and we've got proof." "What kind of proof?" "Digital, names, dates, financial records. Everything needed to burn it all down." A long pause followed. "That is not the kind of thing you want to discuss over an unsecured line, Reed." "I know, but I need extraction, soon." "Okay," Hank said. "I've got a guy, ex-ranger, trustworthy. He can be there by nightfall with transportation." "To where?" "I know someone, journalist. Worked war correspondence in Iraq, Afghanistan. Has connections with legitimate federal agencies. People above the pay grade of whoever S protecting this operation. How do we know we can trust this person? Because she is the one who broke the story on those military contractors running black sites back in 19. Cost her plenty to do it, but she didn't back down. A name, Hank. Sarah Voss, Washington Post. The name hit Miles like a physical blow. Sarah Voss, the woman who ED interviewed him after Fallujah, who D seen through his military-approved responses and found the truth beneath. I know her, Miles managed. Good. That'll help. Hank's voice lowered. One more thing. The cabin, it is not in any database, but if these people are as connected as you say, they might find it eventually. Be ready to move fast. Understood? My guy will be there around 1800 hours, driving a dark green Jeep Cherokee. Name S. Wilson. He'll authenticate with the phrase weather in Denver. You respond with colder than Kabul. Military protocols, familiar ground. Got it. The line went dead. Miles turned to find Ellie watching him, her expression somber. What now? She asked. Help is coming, tonight. He crossed to the kitchenette. Until then, we wait, rest, prepare. They ate a simple meal. Afterward, Miles checked the perimeter of the cabin, identifying defensive positions, escape routes, old habits, necessary ones. Inside, he found Ellie standing by the fireplace, examining framed photographs on the mantel. They showed a younger version of the cabin S owner, a bearded man in hunting gear, fishing by a mountain stream, sitting on the porch with a dog at his feet. Normal life, Ellie said, not turning around. It looks nice. Miles joined her, looking at the photographs. It can be. Do you think I'll ever have that? After all this? She gestured to the images. Fishing, dogs, photographs where I am smiling for real? The question pierced Miles's armor, striking at the heart of what had driven him since finding her. Not just protecting her from immediate danger, but the deeper hope of giving her a future beyond survival. Yes, he said, the word a promise. You will. Outside, the afternoon light was beginning to soften. Hours yet before Hank's contact would arrive. Hours of waiting, of vulnerability. You should rest, Miles told Ellie. Bedroom S through there. I'll keep watch. She hesitated, then nodded, fatigue evident in the slump of her shoulders. Wake me if anything happens. After she gone, Miles settled into a chair positioned to watch both the window and the door. He placed the 9mm on the small table beside him, within easy reach. The USB drive he kept in his pocket, a constant reminder of what was at stake. The hours passed slowly. Miles maintained his vigil, moving occasionally to check different angles through the windows. No sign of pursuit. Yet the feeling of wrongness persisted. It had been too easy, their escape from Coyote Springs. Unless they already knew where Miles and Ellie were headed. Unless they were waiting, positioning themselves, preparing an ambush. The thought chilled him. He reached for the phone, intending to call Hank again, to warn him, to call off the extraction. But before he could dial, headlights swept across the clearing outside. A vehicle approaching up the narrow track to the cabin. Miles was on his feet instantly, 9mm in hand. Ellie, he called. We've got company. She emerged from the bedroom, alert, despite having been asleep moments before. Is it them? Don't know yet. Miles moved to the window, keeping to the side. Get your shoes on. Be ready to move. The vehicle came into view, a dark green Jeep Cherokee, just as Hank had described. It stopped at a distance from the cabin, headlights still illuminating the clearing. Could be our ride, Miles said, or could be a trap. Miles checked his watch. 17:35 hours, earlier than expected, but close enough. Stay inside. I'll go out, verify identity. I'm not leaving you, Ellie said, her voice steady. Ellie, no. She stood her ground. We stay together. That is how we survive. Miles wanted to argue, but he recognized the look in her eyes, the same determination he had seen when she had faced down Phillips in the diner. Okay, he conceded. Together. but stay behind me." They moved to the door. Miles positioned Ellie in the doorframe, where she'd have cover but could still retreat inside. Then he stepped onto the porch, the 9mm held low against his leg, hidden but ready. A figure emerged from the Jeep, tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the distinctive gait of someone with military training. He stopped at the front of the vehicle, hands visible. "Weather in Denver?" the man called. The authentication phrase. Miles felt some tension leave his body, but not all. "Colder than Kabul," he responded. The man nodded, then walked toward the cabin. As he got closer, Miles could make out more details. Mid-30s, close-cropped hair. The build of someone who hadn't to let civilian life erode his physical discipline. "Miles Reed?" the man asked, stopping at the foot of the porch steps. "That's right. Dave Wilson, Hank sent me." He glanced at Ellie, then back to Miles. "We need to move. Timeline S accelerated." "What does that mean?" Miles asked, not moving. "Means those guys looking for you. They've set up roadblocks on all major routes out of the county. State police, local sheriff S departments. They were using some story about fugitives wanted for murder." Miles thought of Sheriff Mercer, gunned down in the diner. They were not entirely wrong. Wilson shrugged. "Don't care what happened. My job is to get you and the girl to Sarah Voss." "Why the rush? We were supposed to meet at 1800. Hank called, said to move up the timeline, said you might have been compromised." Wilson gestured toward the Jeep. "We need to go now if we are going to make it through before they lock everything down." It made sense, yet something felt off. "How is Hank planning to get us past those roadblocks?" Miles asked. "He is not," Wilson replied. I know these mountains. Old logging roads, fire trails, ways around the main highways." He checked his watch. "But we need to move now." Miles weighed their options. Stay at the cabin, potentially compromised, or trust this man, a stranger, vouched for only by Hank's word and knowledge of the authentication phrase. "Give us a minute," he said, stepping back into the doorway with Ellie. Inside, he kept his voice low. "What do you think?" Ellie glanced out at Wilson, then back to Miles. "I don't trust him," she whispered. "Something is wrong." "The authentication checked out," Miles said. "And Hank wouldn't send someone he didn't need trust. Unless Hank didn't need send him at all." Ellie's eyes were wide. "What if they got to Hank? Made him talk?" Miles looked out at Wilson, still waiting patiently. Nothing in his behavior raised immediate alarm. No nervous fidgeting, no wandering gaze, no hand straying toward a concealed weapon. But Ellie's instincts had kept her alive this long. Miles had learned to trust them. "Okay," he said. "We all decline the ride." Miles stepped back onto the porch. "Thanks for coming all this way," he called to Wilson. "But we decided to stay put until we hear directly from Hank." Wilson's face remained impassive. "That's not an option, Reed. Orders are to bring you in now." "Whose orders?" Hank asked, like I said. "Then he can call and tell me himself." Miles kept his tone casual, but his grip on the 9mm tightened. "We all wait." Wilson sighed as if disappointed. "They said you might be difficult." His hand moved to the small of his back. "Sorry about this." Miles shoved Ellie inside the cabin an instant before Wilson drew his weapon. The first shot splintered the doorframe where Miles' head had been seconds before. Inside, Miles slammed the door shut, locking it. "Back door!" he shouted to Ellie. "Now!" More shots tore through the cabin's front wall, not random but placed with precision. Wilson was a professional shooting to kill. They ran through the kitchen toward the rear exit. Outside, Miles heard another vehicle approaching, reinforcements for Wilson. The trap had been sprung. At the back door, Miles paused. "Into the trees," he told Ellie. "Keep going downhill." Donati stopped. Donati looked back. "What about you?" Fear and determination warred in her eyes. "I'll be right behind you." The lie came easily, necessary to get her moving. "Go!" As Ellie disappeared into the tree line, Miles turned back. The front door splintered inward, Wilson's silhouette framed in the doorway. Miles fired twice, forcing him to take cover, buying precious seconds. Through the windows, he caught glimpses of the second vehicle, another SUV, black like the ones from town. Men were emerging, spreading out to surround the cabin. Miles couldn't win this fight, not against these odds, not with Ellie's safety at stake. But he could buy her time, the USB drive. Miles reached into his pocket, withdrawing the small device, the key to bringing down the entire operation. He crossed to the fireplace, grabbing one of the framed photographs from the mantel, a man and his dog. He broke the frame, removed the photo, and slipped the USB drive behind it. Then he carefully reassembled the frame, leaving it slightly askew on the mantel. "Reed," Wilson's voice called from the front room. "It's over. Come out and we won to hurt the girl." Another lie. Miles knew too well what would happen to both of them if they were captured. He moved to the back door, checking the magazine in his 9mm, 3 rounds left. Not enough for a firefight, but enough for what he needed to do. Outside, the mountain air had cooled with the setting sun. Miles stayed low, using the cabin for cover as he circled toward the front. The men had spread out, some heading into the forest after Ellie, others maintaining positions around the clearing. Miles counted 5 figures in total, including Wilson. Professional types like the men from town. Not local law enforcement or hired muscle, but trained killers. He waited until 2 of them moved past his position, heading toward the tree line. Then he fired. One shot into the air, deliberate and attention-grabbing. "Here!" he shouted. "I am over here!" The reaction was immediate. The men turned, weapons drawn, focusing on his position. Away from Ellie's escape route, Miles ran, not toward the forest where Ellie had gone, but parallel to it, drawing their pursuit in a different direction. Behind him, shouts and gunfire erupted. A bullet whined past his ear. Another tore through the sleeve of his jacket. He kept running, lungs burning, the old shrapnel wound in his back, sending daggers of pain with each footfall. But he pushed through it, focusing on the mission. Get them away from Ellie, give her a chance. Ahead, the ground dropped away sharply, a ravine or gully too dark to gauge its depth. Behind him, the pursuers were closing in, their flashlight beams bouncing through the trees. Miles fired his remaining rounds, not aiming to hit, but to slow them down. Then he scrambled down the steep embankment, loose rocks and soil giving way beneath his feet. He half slid, half fell down the slope, coming to a jarring stop against the trunk of a fallen pine. Pain shot through his left leg, a break or a severe sprain, impossible to tell in the darkness. But he couldn't stay here, couldn't let them catch him yet. Above, the men had reached the edge of the ravine. Their flashlights swept the darkness, searching. He went down here. Water, careful, could be waiting to ambush us. Spread out, box him in. Miles dragged himself deeper into the ravine, using the fallen tree for cover. His legs screamed in protest, but he forced himself to keep moving. Just a little farther, just a little longer. The ravine widened, opening into a small clearing beside a stream. No cover here, just exposed ground and moonlight reflecting off the water. Miles knew he'd reached the end of his run. His leg wouldn't carry him any farther. His weapon was empty, and the men were closing in from all sides, their lights converging on his position. He sat with his back against a boulder, facing the direction they would come from. Waiting. Ready. Wilson emerged first, weapon trained on Miles' chest. "That was stupid," he said, breathing hard. "All you did was tire yourself out." The others appeared from the darkness, surrounding Miles in a loose semicircle. "Where is the girl?" Wilson demanded. "Gone," Miles answered. "Long gone, and so is the evidence." Wilson's expression hardened. "We'll find her. There is nowhere she can hide from us." "Maybe," Miles conceded, "but she's smart, resourceful, and she knows who to trust now." He smiled, the expression genuine despite the circumstances. "You underestimated her once already. Cost you 3 girls and a USB drive full of evidence. Want to bet against her again?" One of the other men stepped forward, older, better dressed than the others. A leader, not a foot soldier. "Mr. Reed," he said, his voice cultured calm. "My name is Lawrence. I believe we can resolve this situation." "Is that right?" "Indeed." Lawrence smiled thinly. "You are a man who understands the realities of the world. The compromise is necessary for civilization to function." Miles stared at the man, disgust rising like bile in his throat. "You were justifying the rape and torture of children." "I am explaining a necessary evil," Lawrence corrected. "One that has existed throughout human history. We simply manage it. Contain it. And the girls? What about them?" Lawrence shrugged. "Unfortunate, but inevitable. At least we ensure they are girls who wanted be missed. Minimal disruption to the social fabric." The casual cruelty stunned Miles. Not just the content, but the absolute conviction behind it. This man, this monster in an expensive suit, truly believed what he was saying. "You are wrong," Miles said quietly. "They are missed. Every single one of them." He thought of Ellie, of her father who had taught her to shoot, of her mother who had fallen apart after his death. They matter. "A philosophical difference," Lawrence dismissed. "Tell us where the girl is, where the USB drive is, and you walk away. A new identity, a substantial sum of money, enough to start fresh anywhere you choose." Miles laughed, the sound harsh in the quiet clearing. "You think I'd believe that? You are not a threat to us without the girl, without the evidence. Just another damaged veteran with PTSD and a drinking problem. Who would believe you?" The assessment was brutally accurate. Without Ellie, without the USB drive, Miles was nothing. A ghost, drifting through life without purpose or meaning. But Ellie was real. The girls in the mine were real. And the evidence that could save them was real. "No deal," Miles said. Lawrence sighed as if disappointed by a child. "So poor decision." "Very well." He nodded to Wilson. "Make it look like suicide. PTSD case couldn't handle the guilt anymore." Wilson raised his weapon, aiming at Miles' head. "Last chance, Reed. Where does the girl? Where goes the drive?" Miles closed his eyes, seeing not the darkness of the ravine but the village outside Fallujah. The house with the blue door, the girl with the rabbit. All the moments that had led him here, to this clearing, to this choice. "She's free," he said, "and that's all that matters." He waited for the shot, for the darkness to become permanent. Instead, a voice rang out from the shadows. "Put the gun down, now!" Miles' eyes snapped open. Figures emerged from the trees surrounding the clearing. Not Wilson IS men, but others. Tactical gear, professional movements, weapons trained on Lawrence and his people. "Federal agents, hands where we can see them." Wilson hesitated, his gun still pointed at Miles' head. A shot rang out and Wilson fell, clutching his shoulder. Lawrence raised his hand slowly, his composure finally cracking. "This is a mistake," he said. "Do you have any idea who I am, who I know?" "Oh, Lawrence Whitfield," a woman's voice replied. "CEO of Whitfield Enterprises, owner of numerous properties across the Southwest, including an abandoned turquoise mine in Coyote Springs." Sarah Voss stepped into view, a digital recorder in her hand. "And yes, we know exactly who you are, who you know, what you have done." Miles stared in disbelief as federal agents surrounded Lawrence and his men, securing them, reading them their rights. Sarah approached, kneeling beside Miles. She looked older than he remembered. More lines around her eyes, gray streaking her dark hair. But her gaze was the same. Sharp, compassionate, unflinching. "Been a while, Reed," she said. "How?" he managed. "Your friend Hank contacted me this morning. Said you had evidence about a trafficking ring. We've been working this case for months, building evidence against Whitfield and his operation. But we needed more." "Ellie?" Miles said, suddenly panicked. "The girl." She ran into the forest. "She is safe," Sarah assured him. "We found her about a half-mile from here. She's the one who told us where to find you." A small smile touched her lips. "Smart kid. Said you to do something stupidly heroic to draw them away from her. Relief washed over Miles, so powerful it left him lightheaded. The USB drive. She told us about that too. Said you'd hide it somewhere in the cabin. We all recover it. Medics arrived, attending to Miles' injured leg. As they worked, he watched Lawrence being led away in handcuffs, his empire crumbling around him. "Where is she?" Miles asked Sarah as the medics prepared to move him. "Ellie, I need to see her." "Shio's at our base camp just down the mountain. You will see her soon." Sarah hesitated. "She asked about you, wanted to know if you were okay." Miles nodded, throat tight with emotion. "Tell her I am. Tell her. Tell her she did it, she got free. And she helped others get free too." "Tell her yourself," Sarah replied. "She's waiting for you." At the top of the ravine, vehicles waited. Ambulances, FBI SUVs, Sarah's sedan. And standing beside one of them, wrapped in a blanket but standing tall, was Ellie. When she saw Miles, she broke away from the agent beside her, running to the stretcher. "You re-alive," she said, her voice breaking. "You stupid, stupid man. Why did you do that?" "Had to make sure you got away," Miles replied, reaching for her hand. "Had to make sure you had a chance." Ellie took his hand, her grip strong despite her size. I thought you were going to die, like my dad, like everyone else who tried to help." "Not this time," Miles said. "Not today." The medics began loading the stretcher into the ambulance. Sarah approached, placing a gentle hand on Ellie's shoulder. "We need to get him to a hospital," she said. "You can ride with him if you want." Ellie nodded, not letting go of Miles' hand as she climbed into the ambulance beside him. "What happens now?" Ellie asked. "After the hospital, after all of this." Miles looked at her, this brave, fierce, damaged girl who had found the strength to escape, to trust, to fight for justice when the world had given her every reason to surrender. "Now," he said, "we find our way forward. Together. Like a family?" The question was hesitant, fragile with hope and fear. Miles thought of Emma, the daughter he lost. Not dead, but beyond his reach. He thought of his failed marriage, his failed career, all the ways he broken since Fallujah. But here, in this moment, something new was forming from those broken pieces. Something unexpected and fragile and real. "Yes," he said, "like a family." Ellie's smile, the first true smile he'd seen from her, transformed her face, erasing for a moment all the horrors she'd endured. She was just a girl again, with a future stretching before her. As the ambulance wound down the mountain road, carrying them away from the darkness of the mine, Miles made a silent promise. Not just to Ellie, but to himself, to the man he once was, to the man he might still become. The teddy bear keychain hung from the USB drive hidden in the cabin, a silent witness to all that had happened. A symbol of childhood stolen and, perhaps, reclaimed. In the end, it wasn't about redemption. It wasn't about erasing the past. It was about choice. The choice to stand, the choice to protect, the choice to believe that even in the darkest places, light could still be found. And you? Would you make the same choice? She looks like you. Same eyes. The road narrowed, winding higher into the foothills. According to the truck's odometer, they come about 15 miles from Coyote Springs, nearing the area where Hank had said the cabin would be. "Pull over," Ellie said suddenly. Miles complied, bringing the truck to a stop at a small turnout overlooking the valley below. In the distance, Coyote Springs was barely visible, shimmering in the heat. Ellie reached into her pocket and pulled out a small object, holding it in her palm. A USB drive, scratched and dirty, attached to a broken keychain shaped like a teddy bear. "What is that?" Miles asked. "Everything," Ellie replied. "Names, dates, account numbers, videos." She closed her fingers around it. "I took it the night I escaped. It was in the office. I thought if I had proof, someone would have to help me." Miles stared at the small device,